Okay, welcome to this little lecture or screencast on how should we live. Now, I've taken your feedback with my very handsome head blocking some of the images, so hopefully I've twiddled with those slides and made it a bit clearer for you. And I hope the audio is okay. It is the best I can do at the moment, but if I speak loudly and clearly, then we might be all right. Okay, so last screencast covered the pre-Socratic philosophers, a real broad overview. You don't need to know everything about them, but I think it's helpful. It just gives you a bit of context of where we place Socrates. And if you can remember, I talked about the importance of Socrates being that he was the first philosopher who switched things from looking at the world and trying to speculate on how and why the world is as it is. Socrates flipped that to now looking at the human condition, in particular the question, how should we live? Now, Socrates tried to answer that with his actions and his words and his teachings, but what's really important for us here in the 21st century is Socrates as a role model for how should we live. Okay, so let's go through in a little bit of context. Look, we're looking at the time, brilliant, and I've adjusted that picture so hopefully my rather large head isn't covering anything there. We're looking at the late 5th century BC in Athens, Greece. So this is 500 years before the birth of Christ. And this was a time in Athens where the old beliefs were being questioned. Athens, as you may know, is the birthplace of democracy. It's the birthplace of Socrates in particular. You've got Plato and Aristotle, although they didn't live in Athens, they had lots of their work there. At the time that we're looking at, people were questioning these beliefs about the world, particularly as we talked about the stories of like Demeter and Persephone. Does that really explain the world? Is that adequate enough? We've had the work of the pre-Socratics, we might call them scientists, and they've influenced how people are seeing the world. And so people are questioning the importance of the gods. They're questioning the influence of the gods, if they have any importance or influence at all. Now, in particular, was that hoary old question that has plagued humanity ever since, was what was the purpose of life? What were we here for? How to make the best of the time we were here? And now these are uncomfortable questions for many people, no matter what time of the history of humanity we're looking at. It did create uncomfortable feelings amongst many people who didn't think that philosophers should really be doing this sort of thing, because it created unrest. No one likes being plagued with questions. Hey, what is the purpose of your life? It's uncomfortable. And we see that today. And many people back in 5th century Athens and also in today and all the time in between don't actually want these questions to come at them. What is the purpose of life? And you found that with the classes that we've done in the first week. Some of those questions I asked you were perhaps uncomfortable, although I hope they were very interesting and thought-provoking as well. And so this is the time that we're talking about, late 5th century BC in Athens. Now, there is a particular concept I want to talk about, which is a very Greek concept. It's called Aret. Aret means excellence. Excellence. Everything and everyone has Aret. So, for example, the Aret of a knife is to cut well. Okay, if the knife cuts well, it is fulfilling its Aret, its excellence. The best thing it can be, the best function it can perform for a knife is to cut. And so we need to apply Aret to humanity. And now there's a very Greek concept of striving for Aret, to be the best you can be, to strive for that personal excellence in everything that you do. That is a Greek concept, the concept of the individual striving to be the best they can be. Now, as you know, Athens is the birthplace of democracy, and this is very much about the importance of the individual, the sovereignty of the individual. And that's a very Western idea that was taken and magnified by Christianity, the sanctity of the individual, the rights of the individual, and that led to human rights and the rights of the individual. Well, it all comes back to this. It comes back to ancient Greece, the late 5th century BC Athens, with the concept of Aret, that the individual has the right to strive to be the best they can be, the most excellence. That's Aret. Okay, so these are circulating around in 5th century BC Athens, these ideas. And then what we have is the Sophists. Now, you might be familiar with the word sophistry, which is to sort of, I guess, convince that things that aren't true is to kind of make them true and to kind of twist things. But look, the Sophists were, in 5th century BC Athens, they were traveling teachers who offered guidance. And they would travel all around Greece, and particularly in Athens, and they would offer guidance. They'd offer their teachings and for a fee. So you would pay for a day being taught by the Sophists. Perhaps you guys should pay me for a day. That'd be nice. I'll tell you what my daily fee is after this. Now, what the Sophists taught was the ability to argue both sides. So they, like lawyers, like teaching lawyers, you can be a defense lawyer or lawyer for the prosecution, is teaching one to argue both sides. Now, that's a very useful skill, but many Greek people saw the Sophists as dangerous because they could make the weak argument defeat the stronger. Just because you win an argument doesn't mean you're right, does it? You could well be wrong, but you have superior argumentative skills. And actually, to digress a little bit, one sees this in relationships, is that if you're just trying to win, what if you're wrong? If you win an argument with your significant other, but you're wrong, then you're going to go away from that believing that, yes, I've won the argument and yes, I'm right. So it's like you're doubly wrong. Winning doesn't mean you're right. You could be wrong, and it's the worst thing to win if you're actually wrong, because then you're convinced that you're brilliant, which is terrible. And so what the Sophists were distrusted by the Greek populace because they made it all about winning instead of the truth. And that's crucial. If we're teaching students just to win, what about truth? Does it not matter? And so the Sophists were distrusted because they're challenging tradition. They're challenging that striving for excellence. That is not excellence. That is not Aret, to be able to make the weaker argument defeat the stronger. That's not right. To make the wrong defeat the right, that's not right. And so they were distrusted. And anyone who was a Sophist was, people look over their shoulders at them. But they were very popular and they were making money. And so they're a big part of the story. Here's a cartoon, and we pay the maximum minimum wage. Great. That's sophistry. Okay, it's disingenuous. All right, that's a Sophist. Okay, and so, heck, looks like my head's going to cover a little bit of Aristotle. Sorry about that. But so we've got our three main Greek philosophers. We've got Socrates, we've got his star pupil was Plato, and then Plato's star pupil was Aristotle. Okay, so it's these three philosophers that the Western philosophical tradition stems from. Particularly the example of Socrates, I think, is how Socrates lived his life is our particular interest. So Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle that will follow. We're going to look at Socrates and with a bit of Plato. Plato's in the centre there because ideas are very important. Aristotle also, but perhaps not so much for Socrates. Socratic moral philosophy. So let's start by looking at Socrates, and here is a statue of Socrates. It's a photo that I took in the museum in Athens. Let's look at Socrates. Who was Socrates? Well, here's a number of things. Born 469, he had a wife. We know his wife's name, Xanthippe. He had 3 sons. So he's a normal family man. He was a soldier. He fought in 3 battles with the Athenian army. So he's experienced in that in fighting, and that's important when we try to understand Socrates. He was a teacher, and Socrates would teach to anyone who was willing to listen to him. Now, unlike the Sophists, he never charged a fee. Socrates would simply walk the lanes and the alleyways of Athens in the old district known as the Plaka, which is just below the Acropolis. Socrates would walk these areas and he would sit in shaded places and he would talk and teach to anyone who was willing to listen to him. And such was, he never charged a fee, and he was always claiming poverty because his life's work was teaching, but he wasn't getting any reward for it. In 399 BC, the estate of Athens sentenced him to death for worshipping false gods and corrupting the young with the official charges, and he was ordered to drink poison, which he did, and he thus died of hemlock hemlock poisoning, and that was the end of Socrates, and his body was burnt. He was in prison for 3 days before that. I've been fortunate to visit Socrates' prison a couple of times in Athens. So there's Socrates' life. Now, Socrates, perhaps his most famous quote is this one: "The unexamined life is not worth living." For Socrates and for his students, which include us, it's that there is no point in living if you do not examine your life. If you just exist, if you drift through day to day, being swayed this way by that argument, swayed that way by that one, just going through with no direction in life, just reacting and then dying. That's not, as far as Socrates is concerned, there's not a life that is in any way worth living. If you have got no moral values, if you're striving for nothing, if you're just going from hashtag to hashtag to virtue signal, your life is a waste. It's not worth living. You are not seeking Aret. You are not doing right by yourself or by the God that resides within you, which is interesting. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept because it's continued from Socrates. Pythagoras taught that every human has a mortal soul, and Socrates taught also, yes, that there's a very good chance that the soul will carry on after life after death, and his pupil Plato taught that the human has a soul, and Christianity obviously made that a very central tenet of their teaching. Now, you can disbelieve, you can say, oh, no, rubbish. There's no such thing as a soul, and that's fine, that's sweet as, but I'm sure you have your own mind. Interpret it like that you have your own mind. It's something that is essentially you. You can interpret that if you don't like the word soul, you have your own mind. And the idea is that there is a bit of a God in you, and you can put that as a God as a capital G if you're Christian. You can put it as a small G if you're not. You can put whatever you like there. You can how you interpret the word God, but there is something that is in you that makes you special. Okay, and that makes you special. It makes you an important entity to everyone else and to the gods and to the world and to the universe. That your mind, who you are, is important. And this is part of Socrates' teaching, and that you need to honor. And I'm going to use the word God here because that's how it comes down to us. You need to honor the God that is in you, the special part that is within you, that is more important than just your body. You need to honor that by striving for Aret, by doing the right thing, by striving for excellence. And this is what Socrates is saying: is that honor that special part of you that is God-like, and examine your life and seek to make it better and seek to make yourself better. That is what Socrates is trying to teach us. Just if your unexamined life, you're just existing, as I said, from hashtag to hashtag, virtue signal to virtue signal, tweet, notification on your phone, click like, your life is not worth living. You're not honoring the God that is within you. This is Socrates' central teaching. Now, as I said, 5th century BC Athens. This is Athens today. Talk about the Acropolis up here, the temple to Athena, high above the city. This is the sacred rock, and as you can see, the ruins, and then the city is here. At the foot of the Acropolis is the Plaka, the old district where Socrates walked around and did his teaching. It's a very, very cool part of the world, but it's probably my favorite part of the world, really. This is the Plaka. We have the Acropolis here, and you can see down here, this is the oldest inhabited center of Greece, the Plaka district, the alleys, the highways, and the byways of Athens. And here's a little video which will play for us, taken from the rooftop.
Oh, this one's me.
Okay, so this is 5th century BC Athens that we're talking about with Socrates, his key ideas of Aret and striving to be the best you can be. Hope that's been useful. Ka kite.